Hi, Samantha. It's great to have you on today to talk about you discussing resiliency in our 30+1 book of resilient stories.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Now, I know what stories of resilience have done for me in the past, but what about stories of resilience for you? What has that done for you in the past?
So, stories of resilience for me have assisted me to overcome challenges. It's helped me to become a stronger person. It's helped me to become patient. Um, and that's, I mean, there's more to it than that, but I mean, I'm going to leave that for my story. Uh,
Sure.
but there's just so many aspects to resiliency, and you can look at it from many, many angles. And I may be talking, I don't want to give too much away, but
No.
I may be talking about resiliency from facing a problem that occurred in my family and how I faced that
Yes.
problem and how that person in my family faced that problem.
Right. So for me, stories of resilience, when I was going through my cancer battles, I remember hearing about how my dad's mother did a lot with very little. And
Yeah.
how one year she did so much, and it's really emotional for me, that when she announced to the family that, contrary to what her husband, the family called him Pops, what Pops had said, we're going to the beach for 5 days. We've got a vacation. Now, in the depression of the 30s, you didn't go on holidays. Who had any money? But it seems that she'd put a little something aside every week from her knitting and seamstress work, and she hadn't been totally honest with Pops.
Oh.
So,
Oh.
yeah, so she felt that he had worked so hard and the kids had been well behaved that the family deserved to go to the seaside. So it was actually the lake, but with her British heritage, you went to water, you went to the seaside. So
Yeah.
my dad was old enough to say it was the dining room, the kitchen table was like, and his dad was a World War I survivor. Men didn't cry. So he said, for my dad to sit there with tears, he said, my mother was some tough, resourceful cookie. So when I was going through my cancer issues going, I'm scared out of my mind. Yeah, and
Yeah.
dig deep. Remember who you're from. Oh yeah, granddad was in the merchant marine and they got shot at all the time while they were doing work fixing other boats of war. And as he put it, all I wanted was one little gun to shoot back. I couldn't sleep while they shot at me, so let me shoot back.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine having to concentrate on your work while your ship is being bombed and strafed.
Oh my gosh.
And he was in the merchant marine. He couldn't join the army because he weighed 103 or 104 pounds, so he was too small. But he was technically gifted, a good working with a metal worker, so he was a machinist or a lathe worker. I forget the proper term, but you get the drift.
Yeah.
So that made a big impression on me that he could do that. And there was grandma. She'd been a seamstress back in the day, and I have seen one picture of her in her late teens, early 20s, and who knew your grandmother could look young and beautiful? And oh my gosh, my grandma was a hottie in the day. And she was wearing the dress that she did this from nothing. So it was like, okay, so your grandmother and grandfather are both really talented, and then different stories from my mother's side about her parents and the depression and her brother being murdered in the workplace when she was 6 years old, and how that family had to dig deep and they got cast to the wind because, well, her father had a chronic illness, and 3 days after the brother got killed in the workplace, her father died looking for who killed his boy because he got out of bed and
Wow.
went looking. So it's like, so being really ill is scary, but others have gone through their own versions of big stuff. So come on, Buttercup, let's suck it up and let's figure out a way to do this. So I love stories of resilience, different types,
Yeah.
financial issues, health issues, mental health issues, business issues. And I have to tell you that when they're said in the right way, they motivate me and inspire me to get more done faster, easier. It makes life more relaxing. It's just an awesome thing to witness. So I grew up hearing about grandparents, and then along when you get to be old enough, you find out your dad's bad back is because somebody went to work and didn't follow safety workplace protocols, and some guy fell on top of his head at 250 pounds and blew out 4 of my dad's vertebrae. So it's like,
Oh, no.
my dad's the most active parent I know, play wrestling, coaching baseball, coaching Boy Scouts, doing all these things, but he's supposed to be lying in bed going, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm on disability. And he's like, no, it happened at 19. I went to see 4 different experts. 2 of them said, well, surgery and you'll have to change careers. And he's like, no, I'm 3 years into my apprenticeship. I'm not changing my career unless you're paying. Oh, no, the man that caused it died in a car accident, so there's no witnesses, so we're not going to give you any workplace disability.
Oh, my.
And besides, this could have happened when you played football at 16. No. So, you know, me and workplace disability people, we don't, I have a long discontent with them, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So I look forward to your story because for me, we lift each other up.
Right.
It's not about whining that, oh, this is terrible. You know, in my case, I tell people, they go, you had cancer? I said, yeah, 3 brushes with death, 2 bouts of cancer, 4 locations, first time out.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I learned a lot about coping and processing and dealing with life. And I found out something that was true about me. As a kid, I was sensitive. So if we're playing and I hurt my finger, 3 days later, it's still out there because it really hurts. I need attention. It really hurts. So in crude terms of the 50s, 60s, I was a sucky baby. In modern psychology terms, I'm a super sensor. I can get 100 to 1,000 times more pinch to the brain, and it's overwhelming, and I get flooded with pain. And so I have learned to manage that to the point where 3 of the experts in the hospital, when I was having an emergency health issue, they didn't believe me I was in pain. They'd been taught I should swear, throw things, cast aspersions on their mother and father's marital status and their mother's sexuality.
Oh, my.
But I practiced my Shaolin Kung Fu, pain management skills, and did well. So yes, so resiliency from you and from the other 30 people in the book, they're about inspiring me to go, A to B is not neat. It's going to be A to B in a zigzag spiral fashion, but I'm still going to get there.
Yeah.
And I've done work with chronically ill who go, it doesn't apply to us. Yes, it does.
It applies to everybody.
Everybody in every situation.
Yes.
Resiliency did not cure me from my diabetes. But the experts told me that within 2 weeks of my diagnosis, I was managing it like I'd had it for 5 to 7 years, extremely well. You're probably in the top 2%, Michael. How do you do that? So I say back to you again in your story when you share it, as we learn the process, the language, the belief systems, the skill sets, practicing it, it changes the quality of the experience so that, yes, I am diabetic, and yes, over the 5 years, I've got it more under control and more under control, where there's days where I don't really need a needle if I eat really well, and I don't really almost need the pill, because my pancreas and I get along, but it goes on strike now and it doesn't quite give me all I need. But I'm paying attention to the research, and I ask my doctors slightly difficult questions where they go, that's still a research phase. We're not given that information yet. Okay. I'd like to think one day my diet and exercise regime will mean that maybe my insulin and diabetes issues goes down to 0 and I don't need anything.
Yeah.
I got it way lower than most. So resiliency is about not surrendering. It's about not giving up. It's about getting frustrated and angry, but then not living there. Yeah. Using that to motivate you to deal with the issues.
Push forward. Yes.
You see people as a legal professional in court, and some get angry.
Yes.
I have an ex-spouse like that. Or some of us go, well, here's the 79 pages of the behavior. Yes. So what should I do? And the judge looks at my ex and looks at me and goes to my ex, what's your problem? Right. More like this one, I'd almost have no work here.
Right.
So resilience for me is not a magic pill. No. It's a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of frustrations, but it makes you safer over time. And the key is over time. It makes you more productive and happier.
Right. And it's about education, really. And that's what I think this story is, this book is about, is everybody's story is going to be different.
Yes.
But we're all going to learn something from those various stories. And every author has learned something. and every author is sharing that story so someone else will learn something. And that's
Totally
what's really
agree.
important about this book, and why I decided to come on
Well, I
board.
really appreciate you being in it. I just had a meeting with the federal government today
Mhm.
about prisoners and mental health and staff, and they're having a big issue with staff mental health and prisoner mental health. Believe it or not, with prisoners, they have a zero budget for a lot of it.
That's right.
So, geez,
Yeah.
we incarcerate them because they made big mistakes. We know a large percentage of them have major learning issues,
Right.
brain trauma. Some of them have both those issues. And then we wonder why when we release them, they reoffend.
Exactly.
Well, they didn't ask for a brain trauma if they got beat up in their family at 5 years old.
Right.
They didn't ask to be born with learning difficulties, so school was difficult.
Mhm.
And if they got both of them, no wonder they get frustrated with life.
And then
So-
being put in general population where people don't understand them, and further harm comes to them, which then increases the damage to them. So this is I've read cases about this in human rights. This is a big problem. Very
And the
big.
cycle just goes on and on and
Right.
on. But hey, we showed them who was in charge after they did these terrible things, which do terrible things, fine. But I'm a big believer in rehabilitation.
I am too.
At one point, I worked with the chronically long-term unemployed. Some people in my class were up to 10 years out of work.
Mhm.
And it's amazing if you take people through what are your learning styles?
Mhm.
What are your listening skills? What is your personality styles? What are your personality traits?
Mhm.
And the research I came across that talked about traits versus styles was like, oh, cool. 4 traits we need to know, understand, and respect in each other. And
Mhm.
if I know, understand, and respect them, I'm not going to get annoyed with you when you act at one end of the spectrum for a trait and I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I just go, oh, there she goes.
Right.
When I act out on my trait at my end of the spectrum, you go, oh, there he goes. Nobody's
Exactly. Being
wrong.
able to adapt and understand others. Is very
Adapt and
important.
understand, and
Right.
to share with our listeners on this on these 4 traits. One of them is on speed or pacing. I talk fast.
Me too.
I tend to process fast,
Me too. Yes.
and I'm very pleased because those are huge gifts.
Yes.
Nobody has ever said I'm the smartest one in the room, but by processing fast, I've been able to step into situations that were getting messy and use humor to diffuse things. Or I've broken up a street fight once with a fast, respectful mouth. And it was a mouth. I wasn't talking. I was yelling.
Oh.
But my Shaolin instructor said, when you're talking to someone in an emergency, short sentences, small words, grade 6-year-old words. And I got this 2 people beating 2 people, and I was worried about death happening, to stop beating.
Yeah.
And I broke up a fight with words from 30 feet away.
Well, there you go.
So yes, sometimes it's annoying for the owner of the mouth and the
Mhm.
brain. And sometimes toning it down, dialing it down, talking softer, being quiet. I can actually do it some days.
But you're aware of it. And
But I'm
when you're
aware
aware of it, you can tailor it to the situation.
And when I have a new friend that's got, in their words, not mine, an issue and
Mhm.
shit that gets in the way of life.
Yes.
So sometimes we don't talk for an hour while we drink coffee and watch the world go by. But if we're at the mall, I'll go, psst, at the risk of being a guy and only trying to be respectful, check out the shoes on this lady. Oh my gosh, are those $500 shoes or $800 shoes? But she is styling. And he giggles and he goes, you see everything. I said, it's the way my brain works.
Yes.
Pay attention. The shoes are the accent piece. The whole outfit is tone on tone, gray, black, and white. And the shoes are the pop.
Nice.
And I bet at home she's got a red scarf instead of that plaid black, white, and gray scarf. Oh man, how do you think that fast? I said, I've been practicing a long time.
Right.
I want to pay attention to these things. Doesn't make me smarter. From my retail training days and my cleaning for a company and a Fortune 500 company, they trained me to pay attention.
Right.
So if I sold office supplies right now, I'd be trying to zoom in to see what brand of printer you've got, because when the life cycle of that printer's finished, I want to have first dibs. When you 90% of life of the age of that printer, we need to talk. And is that a coffee machine just over your shoulder? Because I like mine quite a bit.
Oh, I have the same one.
No.
Yes. We have the same one. Cheers. High five.
High five. Cheers.
I don't have coffee in it though.
That's okay. You're allowed.
I'll pretend I'm drinking coffee.
I love that mug.
Yeah, it is great. It is absolutely great. I love it.
So by being in this book, it will give you a toe in the door of people's minds.
Yes.
And so being of a certain age when people actually used to knock on my parents' door and try to sell my mother things, because it was typically in the daytime, except for windows and doors. That was the weekend when the man was home.
Yeah.
They would literally stick their toe in the door so my mom couldn't close the door on them because they wanted to sell. Excuse me, ma'am. We've got these new brushes. Oh, it was the Fuller Brush Man was the one I remembered as persistent.
Oh.
4 times a year.
Oh.
And he would park, and we had 38 houses in our little Crescent subdivision, and he'd knock on them all. And my mother once a year would buy a new scrub brush for the floor or a new, because they don't sell them like this at the grocery store, and the general store no longer carries anything I want. Anyways, that toe in the door was really interesting that they were willing to do that. And some of them would actually, as things wound down, would back up. So my mother felt more in control. Great body language, right? Whereas the toe in the door was like, my mother's like, excuse me, I just said no. No means no. Unless you want it broken, get it out of there. So resiliency for me works in all sectors.
Right.
Personal life in all areas, couples life, parenting. The research on health, which is what got me interested in the topic, was people with chronic illness that practice what some researchers call mind-body skills. I call resiliency skills. 20% less chronic illness issues, less severity of issues, less frequency of issues. I once went 3 years with my chronic health, original one, with no symptoms. Under the microscope in my yearly checkup, oh, Michael, you still got this colitis issue, but no symptoms, no swelling, no bleeding. Nope, doc, I'm practicing the following things. Why don't we teach that in Canada? It's not part of our model. Yeah. Again, it's active, not reactive. Our medical model is, for the most part, reactive.
That's right.
So during my cancer, same thing. In my business, I once worked only 8 months out of the year. I was off with cancer issues for 4 months. I still came in 7th out of 78 people because I had built healthy relationships with my clients. So I started phoning them up and said, hey, to put your feet to the fire and add pressure to our business relationship, yours truly has to go in for a significant physical tune-up. Can I come for an emergency meeting? Because I'm going to be off for 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Oh, sure. It ended up being 4 months, and so I wrote up some orders for 4 months and left them behind. They signed them, put a PO and mailed them in, and it worked. I could have stayed home and gone, the sky is falling, I might die in 8 weeks, or, which, that's okay. That's where your head's at, that's okay. But it's also a choice.
Yes, it is a choice.
Resiliency, you see it with your clients when you go to court. Whether
All the time. Every day.
Ones on whether they're the ones that did wrong or have been wronged, it's fascinating to see how people respond. Because I've only been to court twice, and I won twice because I was honest and I had notes.
Yeah, and I face a lot of human rights issues. That's a lot of the cases that I deal with. So people are very emotional, and it's exactly what you're saying. I educate them. I feel like I'm a counselor, but I'm also a litigator. But it's important to educate them, tell them how things are going to happen, tell them what you've seen so that they can understand, and that helps to ease their mind. Some people to ease their mind, and other people are just going to react, right? Like exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, resiliency is it's a very powerful tool, really.
It is, and I was blessed to have parents to help me frame that.
Right.
Michael, because you know the super sensor guy, it hurts, it really hurts. I think it was this finger, I got a sliver in at 6.
Oh no.
Yeah, so 5 nights later, I'm eating supper with a fork in my hand and my finger's still out.
Yeah, see, I'm like that. I'm sensitive to stuff like that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh, I bumped my head, it hurts. Ah, it's like
my dad's like,
Michael,
Michael, is the pain worse? Is it infected? No. Then we all know that you hurt it. Now it's time to let it go. Right. And stop concentrating on it, or the pain will stay there. You have to say, okay, I'm healing. Yeah. Goodbye.
Exactly.
Let it go. So
And it's hard
just,
unless you realize you're doing it. It's hard.
yeah.
And when people tell you, you have to be open to listen to them, because I mean, they can see it from an outsider's perspective where we're like, oh, I'm hurt. And that's all you see is the fact that you're hurt. So I agree. I hear you.
That cycles things up if you're not careful. So one of the biggest gifts they gave me with resiliency was acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Deal with it, and then let it go and check in a little tiny bit to make sure things are still on course.
Exactly. It's
so
still there.
I
still
can show you the scar when we're in person.
Okay.
So one of the things that resilience is different than some people today is I'm not a big fan of just think positive. That does not work for me. That's not realistic.
No.
Because the reality is, for example, with my cancer issues, thinking positive would have killed me. I had to acknowledge that I was ill, go to the family doctor, go to the gastroenterologist, go get the whole bunch of tests done, go back to the gastroenterologist, having him go, oh, Michael. And me being me going, okay, come on, right here, give it to me. Let's get this over with. I don't need 20 minutes of cuddling till we learn the facts. Right.
So you're saying execute, deal with it, face it.
Yep.
Mindset's one step, right? Like we listen to some of the videos that we hear Gordon talk about, or Lester Bailey, or Kathy Notary Holiday, and honestly, it's a step. And they do things like your health is your wealth, right? Yes. And you see them execute.
You gotta have the mindset, the baseline.
Right. Mindset's the base, and then you got to keep going up those stairs.
Then you have to have a plan. Acknowledge the skills. What are the words, the values I'm going to define myself as, and it has to fit you. When I went for my upper GI tests for my cancer issues, they said, now relax, you can't feel anything. I went, whoa, wait a minute. I got robbed by a motorcycle gang and he tore my peritoneal sac. And allegedly I can't feel anything, but I can show you exactly where he tore it. When you do and I said, I bet you a pretend nickel.
Yep.
Every time you take a picture, tell me if I can point. Why? I'll show you where the fluid's going through. Oh, you can't feel that, blah, blah, blah. So through my whole upper GI, I pointed and he kept going, this is impossible. You don't have any nerve endings there. I said, I didn't have the word super sensor back then and regular sensor, non-sensor, because I actually saw a professor from Carleton University, talk about this. I said, but I've always been able to feel cold moving through my system, always. And he was like, wow, man, that's not supposed to be able to happen. Right. So if I didn't acknowledge that and just told me I was weird, then I would be diminishing who I am. So it's acknowledge it and then find a way to deal with it.
Exactly.
You know, it's like the quick brain. I have to go back and fact check because I listen quick. Doesn't mean I heard accurately, but I sure got the gist of it in a hurry. So it's like you with your clients, you think quick. So it's not about jumping to conclusions. It's about getting the facts and absorbing it quick. And they still want to dwell on it and tell it to you 4 different ways sometimes on bet.
Exactly.
And you got it the first time, you confirmed it the second time, and by the third time you had all the notes done. You don't need it a 4th time.
No. But sometimes you do, because like you said, they tell their version of the story, and you have to make sure that you have the actual story, or else you give the wrong advice, right?
Yes. So I look forward to your story, possibly about a member of the family and lessons learned, or you might go and tell us another story, and that's okay too. But
I'll have to decide which one's going to teach the biggest lesson.
What I like about this book is it's 31 of us. So it's just not 31 of Michael's stories, it's one of Michael's stories and one of your stories and one of Michelle's stories.
Right.
And one of it. That's 31 POVs, points of view. That I really like. So is that the coffee?
Yes, they brought it for me. They're behind me. My business partners are behind me.
I saw that one of them was on.
Should they come on the video? No, they should come and be an author in the book.
Yes. If not this one, the next one. But this one, we're closing in and we're going to run out of spots very soon. So I'm glad you said yes, because I want a diverse group in the book. I've got my own book in my head for my story.
Right.
All the nitty gritties, but this is a great way for kicking it off.
Exactly. And you'll expand on that story in your own book.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you.
So what's one thing you'd leave our viewers, listeners with about resiliency for you?
I think it would be that, educate yourself, try to learn from issues you faced, and try to take different paths in the future if you face the same problem.
Okay.
I think that's what I want to say to people.
Different paths.
Yeah, because
I agree.
that's it, right? You can make the same mistake many, many times, but you should look back at those mistakes you've made to see if there's another way. There's always another way, I'm sure. I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, that old thing about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly, making the same mistakes. And it's like, yep, it's true. I got to be a sales coach for a long time. And with one firm, imagine it's May and you haven't hit your February sales targets.
February of what year?
Why would you wait to May to try to find a solution about why your market share has just imploded?
Right.
You were number 1 and now you're number 11. Hard to pay payroll when the money's not coming in the front door.
Exactly. Wow.
They waited till May and the finger pointing. Oh my gosh. Sales team didn't listen to management. Management didn't listen to the sales team. So the next day, in the middle of the afternoon, I get a call from the VP of sales. Michael, we just paid for the whole conference from one of your ideas. Thank you. I said, could I get a reference letter? No, Michael, you might be the most hated consultant we ever had because you nailed us all to the wall. Politely, but we're all responsible for this, all of us, because none of us sat down and laid it out and said, here's what's wrong from my perspective. How do we fix it?
Right.
We're all busy going, everybody else isn't listening. We don't have the right supports. It's the website's issue. It's sales, it's marketing, it's upper management. He said, we're a mess. We're going to win though. They're still in business. I'd like to think I had something to say about it, but darn, would I have loved a letter of reference. But I had 12 salespeople and upper management, the 12 upper managers glaring at me for the 4 hours, just despising me because I made up a list after I interviewed them all. Why isn't sales telling upper management this? Why are you waiting? Are you in charge of your career or not? Whether you're staying here or not, tell them the truth. That's what you get paid for. You don't have to be nasty. You don't have to be rude. I'm being a little pushy, but you got to catch up. You can't not have made February numbers in 2 weeks from now and June and March numbers by middle of June. You got to catch up and finish this year ahead.
Exactly.
If I work with you, I'd want a raise every year. When I was in a retail consultant, I got a raise 9 out of 10 years, 3 times when there was no raises for anybody else.
Oh.
If you outperform, if you're the only one that captures market share or increases sales while everybody else is down by 4%, you deserve a raise. I don't care what the board said about nobody gets a raise. And they agreed. They gave me a little something. Nothing to make me rich and buy a house with, but it helped. Yeah. So yes, I agree that resiliency is about learning new ways, new thinking, new beliefs, and putting your toe in the water and trying it out.
Exactly.
So thank you for this gift of time.
Thank you.
We will put a link down below.
Oh, awesome.
For people to find you.
Thank you.
And thanks for this gift. And I look forward to a face-to-face one of these days soon.